Well, hello and welcome to TechNow, the web series for ServiceNow admins, builders, and developers on a variety of Now platform topics. This is the episode on Instance Data Replication. It is December 15, 2020. We are at the end of the year, and many are looking forward to turning the corner into 2021. But before we turn that corner, we've got one more presentation to do for you, and I thank Kreg Steppe for doing that. But in the quick intro, for those of you who don't know me, maybe your first time watching any ServiceNow video, let's do the needful and do the quick introduction. I am a senior developer advocate on the developer program team. I have nearly 40 years of experience in IT and software development. So yeah, old guy here. I was a customer for a couple of years from 2000 to 2010, and been a customer for the last 10 and a half as of this recording. Obviously, as this recording gets older, so do I. You can find us on TechNow. I'm also on Live Coding Happy Hour quite frequently. And you'll find some of my work in the ServiceNow community. So as I mentioned, Kreg Steppe is our main presenter today. So I turn it over to him for his introduction.
All right. And now from an old guy to a much younger guy. I mean, look at that face. I'm a staff programmer lead at Cloud. I handle Cloud Labs. I handle all our training infrastructure and for all the classes that you may take at ServiceNow or when you attend Knowledge, all the workshops. Any of that good stuff, a lot of that back-end work is me, not necessarily the class. We have other people that build those things, but I do all the instance standing up and configuring. So I specialize in cloud automation, and I used to work in orchestration in our PS department at ServiceNow, and I've been here for quite a while now, so from 2014 to present, so I'm pushing 6 years. Actually 7 years. Oof. Well, see, I'm getting older as we go, too. So anyway, I enjoy podcasting, photography, and Linux, not necessarily all in that order. Kind of mix it up from time to time. And now I'll turn it back over to Chuck for our agenda.
All right, quick introduction. The agenda today is going to be, as I mentioned, around Instance Data Replication, also known as IDR. So if you hear us using those letters, you'll know what it means. And I'll let Kreg introduce the topic itself, what IDR is and does and why you want to use it, because it's really cool and really fast and a huge time saver. But again, not to steal the thunder, we'll do a little bit of intro material, then we'll do the demo, which is why a lot of people come. They say, hey, show me. Don't just tell me about it, show me. We'll do your Q&A live as possible while we're here. There may be questions that we don't have an answer for. There may be questions that we don't have time to answer. If we don't, we will get those imported and answer them after the fact and then follow up with you so that you can find your answer easily on the community. So fear not. We are thorough. We will get you every answer. If we can't answer it, we will find a subject matter expert that can. So you don't have to listen to us make up an answer. Quick reminder, we launched a podcast last summer called Breakpoint. This is the ServiceNow Developer Podcast, where we have conversations with our product teams so we can tell you about new features, new capabilities, enhancements that have come out to features we've had for a while, as well as customer conversations. And we have a new thing coming in 2021 that I don't want to spoil it for, but we are trying to enrich the experience for developers, what they get out of the platform, what they get from ServiceNow. And I very much enjoy talking to all these people. I am the host, I am the guest, I am the facilitator, but the real stars of the show. We had one on December 9th with Josh Nereus, who was a former developer advocate, now in charge of all things Integration Hub and authentication. So go listen to that if you haven't already. bit.ly/sn-break-point will take you to a page. You can play it right from there, or you can subscribe and get it downloaded to you for free from any of your favorite podcast directories, whether that's Apple or Amazon or Google or Spotify or whatever. Very happy to have that. Comes out every other Wednesday, so every fortnight on a Wednesday. Last one was December 9th. You do the math where you are from there. And I look forward
to subscribe. I subscribe, man. I've heard some good stuff in there. I've enjoyed it.
Awesome. Got a couple of customer conversations coming up in January before we get into our content. So looking forward to that. Quick reminder, if you haven't done so already, developer.servicenow.com is the place to go to grow your career, to learn more skills, to get tight with all of that cool ServiceNow stuff that you want to get tight with. The APIs are documented. There's learning plans, free learning plans that you can go through to get more skills. You can get a free personal developer instance and use that, make totally risk-free of your organization's instances so that you can learn and grow and experience. If you go, oops, I didn't mean to do that, you can always wipe it out and start over again, which I've done a number of times. Very, very handy. So look forward to that. You also find the developer blog, which has not only blog articles, but we'll be adding videos to that. We've got the Breakpoint podcast in there. That's going to be our central hub of where you get all your developer content, is the blog. We've got a share portal. We're going to be doing some upgrades on that in 2021. Oh, man, there's so much cool stuff coming. I would love to sit on this slide and tell you for the next hour, but we've got more important things to do, and that is turn it over to Kreg for IDR. Go, man, go.
That's right. All right, so I'm not going to repeat instance data replication every time. So yes, as Chuck mentioned earlier, you'll hear IDR a lot, and that's what it stands for. That's just instance data replication is a mouthful. But it's easy to get around and use this thing. So what is IDR? It's a platform solution for replicating your data. It's really a no-code solution where you can keep some tables in sync from one machine to the other. You can do bidirectional. You can do one-way. You can even filter some of the data. It syncs nearly in real time. I will say, I know it says real time on the slide, but it's pretty close. It preserves the order. So if there's changes on one instance and changes on another, maybe to the same record, it knows that this one was changed at this particular time, then this one. That way you make sure that your order of your data is properly updated, because that could easily get out of sync if it wasn't. And the data is encrypted in flight. So all that stuff is encrypted from one instance to the other. So you don't have to worry about prying eyes, stealing some of your, looking at your data and accessing it. So keep that in mind. It's all encrypted. Now, there's many cases for IDR. Some of those could be very well that you have a single source of truth and maybe some outlying systems that rely on that. So that way you're not worried about trying to push some data out at 2 o'clock in the morning to sync so maybe a vendor can access your data. It's all synced in real time, but you have one single source of truth and it comes back. And again, that relies on that order and the timeliness of pushing some of that stuff back and forth. So yeah, you can manage your data across multiple instances. And a lot of those might be that you want to separate instances for different departments. Maybe you're pushing some data out for a vendor to look at. Perhaps it's a dev stack where you have you have a prod development and test environment. In that instance, maybe you want to push your stories down so developers can see the stories in your dev and test environment, and they can act on it without having to go look in the prod, and then you're juggling multiple instances trying to see what data or look at your stories. They're all in the same spot. And of course, merging between customers, that's another big one. So if you got two customers that merge together, you can kind of work out some syncing between two different ServiceNow instances. And you can look at the diagram and you kind of see how it works. So I got producer A and B, they're doing bidirectional. And you don't necessarily have to do that to all the instances that are connected, because the consumers can subscribe to different types. So we're pushing categories out from producer A to consumer C in that diagram. And of course, maybe users on to consumer D. So you don't have to push the same data out to everybody, but you can, or you can mix it up and make it bidirectional or not. So when would you not use IDR? A lot of that would be, this is not intended to be like a clone. It's not an excuse for a clone. A clone is a one-to-one, the whole thing. Data is, you want to just do some tables, because it is a little resource intensive to copy this table, data from one machine to another, and then maybe even keep that in sync. So this is not for cloning, so keep that in mind. And you do not want to use IDR for if your replication takes, if you got an insertable amount of data that'll take more than, 7 days to complete, that won't work. So that's too much data that you need to try and keep synced up. And of course, the initial seeding needs to be less than 3 million records per set, because again, that's a lot of data to push back and forth.
That's a lot of data.
Yeah.
Before we go on, I know we're almost ready for the demo, but I've got a couple of questions. Is there a cost associated with IDR?
Yeah, it is a subscription application. I don't know the cost, of course, and I would defer to your representative. They can give you all the details on that.
Thank you. Another quick question. Does the replication use standard table APIs or another method? And if you don't know, I can answer that as well.
It uses another method because there's an in-between server that does this in the background in our data center. So, which also leads to the other reason you would not use this is if you were on-prem customer.
Good point. Yeah, the middle server actually keeps the data fast and secure, I might add. So, as Kreg said, in flight, it's encrypted.
Yeah, and it also handles the sharing of keys between it because that's also important between the two systems. And you'll kind of you'll see the keys in a minute when we're doing the demo, but it transfers the keys and it keeps everything together. Yep.
Can an MSP use it for its customers?
MSP, like for domain separation and stuff like that?
Yeah. Or say, here, you've got your incidents in this domain. I'm going to send them to you. I'm going to make them available to you as a producer set, for example.
Yeah, you could, but I wouldn't. Don't rely on it for domain separation per se. But if you had another instance, surely you can. I mean, you can filter the data that's sent out from the producer. Yep. So you could certainly filter out for a particular domain and only send an instance, another instance, certain data. So yeah, I guess you could. I wouldn't get too complicated with it, but you can.
Use cases because a lot of MSPs house the customer's data. So what's the use case? Because this is for replicating data between ServiceNow instances. If your customer already has an instance, then what are you sending them? Because normally if I'm a mom and pop shop of 50 employees or 100 employees, and I can't afford to have an instance of my own for whatever resources purposes, then I would go to the MSP for not just the services, but for the service of tracking my incidents and problems and whatever other records we want to do. So yeah, we should have an offline discussion about what the use case is and what you want to send and communicate between those ServiceNow instances. I'm curious why a customer would have an instance and also an MSP.
Well,
don't know.
Only, again, to one of my use cases earlier was if you had an external vendor, maybe, if you had an MSP, like a multi-domain instance, and you want to just send certain data out for this one company to another instance so a vendor can see it, that's one thing. You could do that, and you can still filter it all out. But inherently, domain separation isn't supported. That's the whole point.
Okay. And there's another question that keeps popping up here about where did it just go? We talked about the costs. We talked about on-prem. We talked about e-bonding. That's it. Could this be a replacement for e-bonding? And I would say possibly. We got to look at the use case. There is something on the roadmap specifically for a configurable e-bonding solution coming. So if you were looking at IDR, I would, and you haven't implemented it yet, actually hold off until we get to Quebec, #safe harbor, #safe harbor. So there is something coming specifically for that. Okay. I can't even, it's another 3-letter acronym, but all right, let's move on. I think we're getting close to the demo, yes?
All right, we're getting there. So,
all right.
Yeah, so I'm going to just quickly talk about the different types. We got bidirectional. So I think it kind of speaks for itself. So instance A is sending data to instance B and vice versa automatically. So as soon as they're subscribed to each other, by subscriptions, I mean like you have a producer table that's being pushed out and you have an instance that's subscribed to those outputs. This can be bidirectional. So if you have another department that's updating an incident, then the data will come back automatically to instance A once it makes it circle around circle B. So I think you kind of get that. So the producer configuration you can do. Actually, I made a mistake here. So transform currently is not on the producer. It's on the consumer side, but you can do transforms. You can set up a discrete producer set. So some of your say if you have an instance in the US and you have one in Europe somewhere, you can set it up where some of that data goes over to it, but it's identified from where it came from. So you can kind of keep up to date, or people can understand that you're subscribed to one company table, but they're seeing it, from the US instead of maybe from Europe. So they know the source of the data. And there's adapters That's also on the consumer side. I don't know why I put producer configuration, but on the adapters, you can automatically do some trans configuration, maybe translating from the dollar to the euro or something like that. So maybe some date translations. You can do that on the fly too, as they get pushed over and pushed back. And now we are ready for the demo. So let me go fire up the screen share. So I just want to show you real quick. I know these kind of demos get a little confusing when you're looking at two different instances. So here's my producer, and you can see the flag on the side that says producer, and this is the green instance. And over here we got a blue instance, and it has a green consumer. So hopefully this is enough to kind of clue you in to what's going on here. So I'm going to set up a producer set, a producer replication set, that's going to send over our incidents to the consumer. But I'm going to do this first one just one way. It's not going to be bidirectional. So let's start this. So I'll click New. Let's give it a name. We'll say Incident Replication. Now, keep in mind that you're going to need this exact name later when you go to tell the consumer what you're subscribing to. So keep it simple. I wouldn't put a lot of capitals and stuff like that. Just try and keep it straight so it's easy to copy and push over. Or if you're trying to type it, you know exactly what to type. You can enable bidirectional here. We'll do that in just a little bit, another part of the demo. There's where you can enable the discrete section. And there's some, you can put a description or maybe incidents from the US. And then we'll hit submit. Okay. So now you see it's in draft. And before we go any further, you have to tell it what tables we're going to export or at least offer. So we'll click New down here on Outbound Entries. And we're going to pick the incidents. Incidents. Here we go. And here's where you can do your filtering. So you can filter for your domain, or maybe you just want high priority. Maybe you're pushing them to a special group or something like that. You can do that. You can also include attachments. And you'll see down below, we now have available all of the fields that are along with the incident table. Now keep in mind
hold on. You notice that, yeah, sysid is mandatory. You have to sync the sysid. I've got a question in here that I'm answering right now that says, what happens if task records have, for example, an incident with the same number in a bidirectional sync? They are two unique records because they have two unique sysids, one on instance A and one on instance B. If it's bidirectional and you created them on two, you're going to have two records on the same, on both instances with the same number. So keep in mind when you're doing a bidirectional interface, whether it's IDR or anything else, you need to determine who is the source of authority. In one case that I use, I have my enhancements and bug fixes and whatnot in prod. That's my source of authority, and it's bidirectionally replicated to dev. So I can expose those to the developers. They fix them, address them, and change the state and add comments and whatever else you do with the defect records. And that gets synced back up to prod, which is the official source of authority. But developers do not create new defect records in subprod. Then you get this crazy numbering scheme because the numbering table on the is unique, and you'll get duplicates and things out of sequence. So you got to think about things like that. This is another integration, and a lot of the same situation information about integrations and planning integrations and understanding what you've got. Hey, December 1st, I just came out with an integration series. So
right.
We'll get that up there somewhere.
All right. So yeah, I was just about to say that same thing. So sysid is mandatory to try and keep. That's your key to make sure that things are in sync, or at least we're talking to the same records between the two instances. So I will select all of these tables, fields, excuse me, and we'll just push them over. And if you note down here at the bottom, I didn't have a problem with this because of what I'm syncing, but edge encrypted fields or passwords, they're not going to be available to you to be able to sync over. So keep that in mind if you go to do the user group or user table or something like that. So now we're set. We're going to hit submit. And when we come back,
are there any tables that are limits in there, Kreg?
There are, and it's in the documentation. I'm sorry, I don't have a note of them, but there are some tables that you're not supposed to sync. I will have to refer you to the docs site for IDR, and it's pretty good. It gives you a good layout of everything, and it mentions those, and I'm sorry, I don't have a note on that.
Probably stuff like sys audit or sys history line.
Yeah,
you know, those,
there's some. Yeah, some tables that are updated a lot. You know, I don't know about logs, but something like that. You know, where it's just it's too noisy. You wouldn't want to do that.
Sure.
So anyway, so we have our incident set up. There's the producer ID, and the state is in draft. So now we got a table set up, and you can set up more than one table. You know, just saying. But we're just doing the one right now. We activate it, and once it comes back, we'll see that it's ready. Activate active replication, so it's ready to go. It's actively putting it out there. And if you need to take a look and see what's going on, the logs are right here as a related list, and it tells you what's happening. You know, if you're having an error or a question or something, you can kind of get an idea what's going on there. So now we're going to set up our consumer replication set where we're talking to this one, and I'm going to flip over to this consumer subscriptions because we're going to use that in a minute. You'll see where the approval comes in. So let's go over here. We'll click new. Notice we're in the, I should have said this. So there's producer replication sets was where we're at. We're now in the consumer replication sets. This is where we're going to consume what the producer's making. So we'll hit new. So we need the address of the producer, and it's kproducer. And we need the name, the producer replication set name, which is what I mentioned a moment ago. I'm going to go cut and paste it. So there we go, incident replication. We hit submit. Now it's going to go talk to that backend server we talked about and say, here's the address, here's the name, and it's pending approval. You see right here, it says customer approval status, approval pending. So if I go back over here to the producer, refresh that list. Oh, look, the consumer is asking for approval. So we'll open their record. We look at it, we go, okay, yeah, that's what we're expecting, and you hit approve. And it gives you a warning. Remember that they're going to have continuous access to the data that's coming from your machine. So until it's revoked. So we want to, just a warning so you're aware. So we hit yes, which if you're doing this, you're probably aware. All right, so it's approved. And you see the keys. These are the sys IDs for that replication set came over. And you see there's the producer and all that, and it was approved. And there you go. So let me reload this form because those buttons don't update automatically. So now you see it is approved. We now have activate, or we can update it if we want to. So we're going to activate it. Now this is going to actually tell the machine to start accepting data from the producer. And it takes a moment. Now it's also worth noting, and you'll see here in a minute, that from the producer, since this is one way, we actually have to seed the table. So when we seed the table, it's going to ask for the it's going to ask the producer to start to give me all the records so we can seed our table and see everything in there. So let me reload this form.
Did you enter any authorization credentials?
I did not.
Consumer, okay, so how does a consumer know to get information from the producer? The producer says, I've got some data I want to make available, correct?
Right.
And anyone on there and just say, I'd like to subscribe and be a consumer.
Well, as we just went through the process, I actually had to approve it.
Okay, so it's the producer approving that is the gateway. It doesn't matter. Yeah. Okay, it's like
so your producer is the source of truth. All right, and you're asking it to give you data. You have to approve it on here. Previous versions of IDR, you had to copy over the keys and all that stuff, so you'd actually do it manually. But now it's all done in the background. But I had to approve it, and that's what I was showing here under consumer subscriptions. You had to click it and see now it says approved. I had to actually go in here and approve it.
If nobody approves, you're not a consumer.
It just sits there. Yeah. It just sits there and doesn't. It can't do it. The consumer can't do anything until it's finally approved. All right, so now we're in here, and you see we got some options here. Here's the inbound entries. There's the incident table that we were just looking at on the producer, or setup rather. This is the table. So I'm going to pull up the incident all, and see I have no records in here, right?
Yep.
So I need to seed it. This is off the consumer. I need to go seed it. So I'm going to select all, and I'll do seed. Requesting seed. All right, it says it's requesting. What's that?
Throw me the data. And
throw me the data.
This will take as long as, more data means longer. I did one about 50,000 records, and it took not long. It was surprisingly fast. I think it was maybe 15 minutes. It wasn't.
Okay.
We're dealing with a much smaller data set here, so.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So here, I just wanted to show that you see it's queued up. It's probably done by now, honestly. But if I go over here to the producer, you can also see seeding requests. Let me refresh that. And you can see that it's already completed. The consumer asked for a seed. So if you had 4 or 5, you could see if somebody requested a seed. But there you go. You see it's 100% complete. We go back over here. You see it's already completed. So I refreshed it. So now let's go to our incident all table. Hey, look, I got 3 incidents. That's on.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, doesn't this use integration hub transactions on the back end as well?
I believe so.
Okay, so you've got to have integration hub licensing to use IDR. And it will
yeah, good point. I see. Yeah.
Okay,
right.
That's kind of what I thought.
Yeah. So here's the 3 original incidents I had, and you can see we're a slow company, only got 3. So, and you can see the 3 matching ones over here. Now, if I try to update one, it's not going to update the producer. But say if we want to do that, say if we want to do the bidirectional setup, let's go do that with the problems. How about that? So we'll go back to producer replication set. Any more questions so far? Or is that it?
What you're hearing from me are mainly questions that are coming out of here. I will start to cite the people asking, so it's a little more personal. Right. I realize I forgot. I'm just firing them live, but keep going.
All right, so problem replication. Let's do the problem table. We'll say problems from the U.S., like we have no shortage of those. So let's hit submit. And we're going to get an option to set up outbound and inbound entries. We're only going to set up, when we set up one, it'll set up both. So keep that in mind because, it's obviously 2 sides of the highway, so to speak. So let's click on new for outbound entry. And as soon as my form renders, problem, add problem. And I'm going to add all the fields, and you can see the sysid is mandatory. Again, with the encryption, we understand that. So hit submit. Okay, now we've got it in there. I'll show you the outbound entries. There's a problem table. Can you see that?
Yep.
And then there's the inbound entry. It set up a inbound for problem. So when we set this up on the consumer, it's going to get both of these entries too, and that way that's how you get to both sides of the street. So now it's all set up. It's in draft. We'll activate it.
And that one checkbox, that bidirectional checkbox, is new to Paris. Prior to Paris, IDR has been around since New York. Prior to Paris, like I set mine up in late New York, possibly early Orlando, had to do that bidirectional manually. You set up a producer, then you subscribe to it on the consumer, then you had to turn around and do another producer set on the consumer manually and go subscribe to it. It's like, what?
Yeah, it gets a little, I was going to say, it gets confusing because all of a sudden your consumer is a producer also, and your producer is a consumer. It takes that layer out, and now it just knows that, okay, really, these are just two together. But yeah, before, actually, I was doing research for this. I was looking at it at one point, and I think the docs changed when Paris launched, and I was like, wait a minute, what's this bidirectional checkbox?
Nice.
So there
Chris,
you go.
Chris is asking,
and again,
if I have incident records on the consumer and the producer, when they get to the consumer view, are they view only, or can they be modified on the consumer?
Yeah, no. See, the problem, if it's one way, if I make changes to this, it won't, obviously the data can go back. So yes, I can change it as soon as my form renders. There you go. See, I can update it and I can close the incident or whatever. It doesn't matter. So, no, these are not read only.
Assuming your ACLs are the same on both instances, of course. I mean, if
good
the
point.
instance says this table is read-only, well, then obviously it's read-only. So it's going to be security dependent on each instance. But yes, you can do either a one-way or a bidirectional and edit them on the consumer instance. It's just those changes aren't going to go back. Think about this is a great way to reduce the amount of clones you have to do. So if all you're doing is cloning so you can refresh incident and sysuser and maybe a couple other things, IDR is going to be a lot faster and keep it up to date. So as you get production data in, you go, hey, subprod, go use it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So let's go set up the consumer for our problem replication. All right. So we go back to consumer replication sets, click new. We'll put the address in there. I think I've still got it in. Oh, look at there. It's me, Santa. S:// kproducer service-now.com. And we'll paste in the problem replication. And we could put a description in there if we wanted to. I'm not going to do that at this point. All right, so kproducer, back into problem. Now it's in draft, and look, we're pending approval. Go back to the producer, and I do want to show one thing. There is one place that you can go look for. If you had several replications going on, it might be a pain to go try and find all of the places where people are trying to prove it. So you can go right here, consumers pending approval, and it'll show all of them. So that way you can address them if in one place rather than having to go dig through and find them as they come in. So let's approve it. Yeah, this looks right. All right, so approve. Yes, we know the data is going to be going that way. Give it a second. And you can see over here on the consumer side, there's the IDs. It's bidirectional. And let me reload this form since some of the data's changed. All right, so you see it's been approved. There's our keys. And down here at the bottom, I'm trying to scroll down. There's the inbound entry, and there's inbound, and then there's outbound. So there's your two-way street data back into the consumer, the producer instance. Now I'm starting to get confused. So let's go to the problem table, and you see I've got two problems. If I go in here, problem all, I don't see anything. So let's go back to our consumer sets problem. Oh, it's because I need to activate it. All right, once it's been approved.
No, that's a good.
I was testing you, Chuck. Yeah, you failed.
Before. Hey, I'm answering questions. They're coming in fast. Well, you're activating it. Anish says, what if the incident table is configured differently on both instances? Like the producer has 4 incident states and the consumer only has 3, for example. So what happens in that case is just like any other instance. If I were to give you an export XML file, it would send along all the values. You could import it, and let's say syschoice didn't have a state on your instance that I have on mine. It would just display it in the list in that blue value. Yeah. It'll say like in_progress, where you might call yours WIP. It goes, hey, it's a value. I don't have it in my choice table. That's going to happen. In the case of a reference field, if I send you a whole bunch of references to users that you don't have, well, they're going to show up as empty entries. It's like, okay, you got a value. There's a sys ID in that field, but I've got nothing to refer to. So it's going to do what the UI does normally. Think very similarly to automating the way you would do an export XML and an import XML. That's pretty much what's happening back end.
So that is kind of important because here, as I mentioned earlier, you can put multiple tables. So if you have 2 or 3 tables that are relating to each other, maybe one's reference fields, you can include all 3 of those here. And they would all get replicated.
That was another. That was another question that we just had. I forgot who asked that. What happens? Let's see. Latha says, what happens with the associated tasks? If I've got incidents and incident tasks, if all I'm replicating is the incident table, it doesn't send it. Again, import XML, export XML. If you want all the data, you're going to have to get all the data.
Yep.
I had to do that for my karaoke app when I said, hey, send all the songs. And then I went, oh, I also need all the artists because that's a reference field on the song table. And I also need all the channels, which is a reference on the song table. And so my replication set had 3 tables, but once it's set up, it just kind of does what it does in the background and keeps sending information from prod to subprod.
Mm-hmm. Now, also part of the subscription, we're subscribed to the problem replication. If there was another table added and you were told, hey, there's a new table, you can click the synchronize replication entries and you would see it show up. It would add another one here. If there's changes that you need, like you said, you added a third table, a second or third table, you can do synchronize and they would show up here. So now that we got it activated, I'll show you the problems and let's see, problems. Go back in here. Thought it was supposed to, because we don't have an option for seeding, so we'll just synchronize replication entries.
Here's another question while you're looking around. Chris comes back and says, what about business rules or client scripts that may be associated with the incidents? That's out of a table we call sysmeta. That's your configurable information. You're still going to use update sets and repos and GitHub to produce that stuff. Do not replicate business rules. Okay, you're going to be taking production stuff down to subprod. That's kind of the backwards way. You want your configuration changes in subprod, in dev, moving to test, moving to prod. They go up the stack, whereas data goes down the stack. So please do not set up a replication set on anything that would normally be captured in an update set, in an app repo. That's for moving your configuration. Otherwise, you'd get really confused really quickly about, hey, I sent this business rule up and it comes down. Obviously, it's called instance data replication, okay? Because you're replicating that transactional data, the incidents, the users, the stuff you can change in prod. That's what we want to replicate to other instances. Yeah. Don't be changing your script includes, or don't add those to a producer set anywhere. If you're doing that, you're doing it wrong. You better find a different solution.
Right. Now, I'm waiting on the data to actually come over from the producer there's only 2 entries, but it's going to take a little bit for the first time to come over, and I wasn't seeing them show up yet. So while we're waiting, we'll give it a minute. See, it says active replication, so the data should come over shortly. Just to show you some of the other options you have here, when we're looking at some of the metadata logs, you can look at all of them here from the replication log. You'll see a little bit more information about what's going on. There's the consumer's pending approval, replication sets in draft. Maybe you'd set some up and they're just still in draft, and they weren't. Actually, earlier when I didn't activate the one, it was still in draft. You would have seen it here. You can test the connectivity with the server on the back end and the data center, and there's a whole monitoring dashboard to see what's going on, and we'll pull that up. Not the fastest instance in the world, but you can see there's some active replications and just some data in there, and there's a few properties about the dashboard, how often to update it. So let's go see if my problems have come over, and they have not. Let's go see if we can figure out what's going on here. So producer, problem. Do not see why they haven't come over. All right, well, let's make one. Let's go into problems, make a new one. First, let's see. Oh, you go. There you go. This chair stinks. Submit. All right, so we made a new one. And, it just didn't, I don't know why the original ones didn't come in, but there you go. So this chair stinks. We're going to update it. They update. So 40,003, 40,003. Should see in a moment the description get updated. And this is, like I said, near real time. There you go. and and you can see it was updated. So the bidirectional works. I'm not sure why my older entries didn't show up, but as we create new ones, looks like create new data going forward, the bidirectional isn't necessarily seeding the old ones, but it's actually passing over new ones and letting us update it. So, so there you go. And you can do that with the work notes. I've done it with the work notes, and those come across as well. So there you go. Got any more questions?
Yes, we have another one from Mason. Says, back to business rules. Do they get triggered on the consumer instance? If you've got business rules, yes, they get triggered. It's just, again, I'm automating the process of exporting XML and importing XML. There was a question about the speed. I don't know. I didn't do it time 50,000 records importing XML versus 50,000 records seeding. But obviously, the advantage of IDR is once it's set up, it's going to keep replicating. It's import-export is one and done, or you're going to have to do it once a week. Somebody's got to do that import XML, export XML. That's not value-add time for our organization, but to keep the sub-prod data in there. Once an incident is brought from prod to sub-prod, let's say I'm testing a new business rule, and I want some production data to test on. Hey, I just got a new incident, for example, into sub-prod. It's going to have all the same impacts on client scripts and business rules and UI actions. Whatever's in that instance will affect that record accordingly, just as if I write it natively. So we're not doing anything to the process itself and how records behave on that instance. That's all determined by what are the business rules, what are the UI actions, what are the flows, what are the workflows. Whatever is happening on that instance is still going to happen. I'm just giving it fresh data.
Now, I do want to show one thing before our demo's over is under the inbound entries, I was looking at the table, the problem table. So I'll click on that because that's the table we sent over. On the consumer side, there's all the fields. Down here, you can click Run Business Rule or Enable Transform. This is where if you want to take this data and put it in another table, you can. Which I'm not going to go into that deep right here, but you can enable Transform and put it in another table. And when I do update, it would actually give me the list of the tables and where to put them. So there's that. I'll discard that. So that way, if you don't have the same tables on both machines, you can still send the data over. It'll just take you a little more work to actually map out which field goes to which field. And there's I
haven't seen before.
What's that?
Akashia says, does IDR have a backout option?
No, once your data's there, it's there.
Again, yeah, you've just imported a whole bunch of records, incidents, problems, changes. The XML has been imported and it's in sync. You can obviously destroy the consumer or producer replication sets, deactivate them and delete them, and it will stop the replication, but that doesn't back out the data. It's there, yeah. It's, again, as if you did import or export XML, import XML. If you already had 100,000 incidents in there and you imported 50,000 more, they're now merged. You're going to have to find a way to identify them and remove them yourself.
That's right. Also notice that only inbound entries. Now, I think down in the road, safe harbor notice, somewhere down the road, this may change a little bit. But on the consumer side, as things come in, that's the only place you can really do transformations into where the data is going. So on the producer side, you don't get the option to do the transformation because it's just sending out the data. The consumer gets it and modifies it as it needs. You could say, change the date from, the American standard over to the European where where it's backwards, the years first, that kind of thing. Okay, so I think that's it for the demo, unless you had any more questions or I need to point anything else out.
I'm just going through the questions. Do you know if IDR manages encrypted fields?
No, as we noted earlier, it says it doesn't do passwords or edge encrypted fields. So those won't even be available to select to move over as fields that need to go over. So the user table is a good example because you have a password.
You can replicate the user table. You just can't replicate the password field.
Correct. That's what I meant. So you can send the users over. I meant the password field is the problem. So you wouldn't be able to select it per per se,
Okay.
but you can select everything else on the user table.
And with edge encryption, obviously, the whole benefit of edge is you've got a proxy that you're going through. If you're going prod to subprod, this is for any two ServiceNow instances. So if Kreg is running, Kreg Corp, and I'm over here at Chuck.com, and I want to send him some data, I've got to have a way to, and some of my is encrypted. It's going to be encrypted with my keys. Sending him that information wouldn't make any sense because he doesn't have my keys, and I don't want to give him my keys. So you need to kind of think about this from a security standpoint, that it wouldn't make any sense to send him a bunch of encrypted information that he can't use. So we're just going to take that off the table.
That's right. So keep in mind, we'll go to the next slide here. And keep in mind, domain separation is not technically supported, but you can filter your data that goes over to your consumer instances. This is a paid-for plugin, so subscription is required, and it can be enabled for consumption only. There's that. So, and also, it's not supported on-prem instances, only in their data center because of the backend server that we mentioned earlier. So some of the top takeaways: simple configuration. As you saw, I set up 2 of them within, 25 minutes, as I was talking about it. And then we got near real-time updates, and everything's secure in flight between all the instances. And just another measure to make sure everything is in good standing going back and forth. All right, so there you go.
Does IDR replace backups?
I would technically say no, but
I would definitely say no, because if it's not doing encrypted fields, and if you lose your production data, well, you just lost all that encrypted data as well.
Let's take that a step further. If you only sync over 1 or 2 tables, you're not getting the whole picture. So no, it's not a backup because you got reference fields and everything else. So no, it would not.
When I was a young man, I had what I thought was a full backup, and then when it was tested and I discovered it was not a full backup, it was a bad day for me. I think I cost my previous company about $750,000 in lost work.
Oh, I thought you were going to say that was your excuse to your teacher why you didn't have your homework.
No, I became the backup expert for years after that. I think they assigned it to a type of punishment. But hey, I think I architected a lot.
That's the same reason I hardly ever delete any data, because I'm always scared. 2 weeks from now, I'm going to go, where is that? Oh, I deleted it. So,
what are the ultimate benefits of IDR? I think we covered that on the slide that said, your top takeaways. It's fast, it's secure, it's near real time. You're going to be able to do single or bidirectional interface.
Well, also, if you got different separated departments, you don't have everybody roaming around in your prod instance that has all your data. You can just give them a subset of what they need. So that's another benefit.
If they've got an instance for it. Yeah, I don't know how many.
If they have an instance for it, that's true.
But yeah. All right, anything else?
I don't have anything else. I think that's pretty much it.
Can you quickly show how to create a catalog item? I'm not here to create a catalog item. Somebody did ask, I forgot who it was, and apologize, but they said, if you replicate SC under rec under item, the catalog items, the request items that have come in, do you also have to replicate the variables? I think it's SC item option is the table. I don't know for certain. I haven't tested that use case, but my gut says yes. If it's a related table,
I would venture to say yes as well.
Yep. Neha says, in a unidirectional IDR, if you enabled transform at the consumer, is there an option/transform script to add a prefix or suffix in the short description or any field so that we can differentiate the incidents?
And you said unidirectional?
Yeah. So the consumer's going to receive this. You set up a transform.
Yep.
You can activate, what was that button called? I'm drawing a blank. Right
adapter?
Next to the adapter. Yes, you could set up an adapter to do that.
Yeah, I think one of the options on the adapters, I looked at them briefly yesterday. Some of them were date related and things like that, but there was one where you could script your own custom script, so you could update it to whatever you want.
Apologies, we're running a little short on time, but we will get the rest of these questions answered as we get them imported. Giving me a couple of days to finish that up. To see you. Quick note, don't take off yet. Don't take off yet. I got to get my slide deck back out here. We've been staring at that, but I'll make it look better in post-production. Yeah, a lot of this information, like what tables are available or whatnot, are in the docs. I encourage you to go to the community if you've got IDR questions as well. If you've got enhancement updates or things you'd like to see in IDR, there's the idea portal on the community. Quick reminder, we've got free personal developer instances and a lot of other resources at developer.servicenow.com. Next month, we will be doing TechNow on the Quebec platform features. We don't have a registration link for that. Keep an eye on social media. Keep an eye on we'll have a registration link out for you very shortly, hopefully in the next day or two. But you don't want to miss that. Mark your calendars now. January 26th, same time, 8 a.m. Pacific time. We'll be covering this. If you miss it then, I'm just warning you because some of you are watching this afterwards. If you miss this, you won't be able to watch it until like late March. I have to hold on to that in sort of a sequestered mode. I can show it live, but because we haven't gone to general availability until 6-8 weeks later, I really want you to tune in and watch this live and see that. I apologize if it's not a time zone friendly area. 8 a.m. is like 8:30 p.m. for India, so we should be pretty good. You know, just put the kids to bed and go watch TechNow for an hour or so. So our January 26th, 8 a.m. Pacific, we will be doing the Quebec platform features, getting in deep on a lot of these features, including some new stuff that's coming to IDR. So look forward to that. What else do we have? We have a Q&A will be answered on the community. So that takes us to the end. Thank you, Kreg, for doing that. I know we had some technical issues when building up to this, but came out really well. We've got IDR covered. And Breakpoint, we'll be talking to Rob Bittner, our product manager for IDR in just a few days. So look forward to that coming out. If I did the 9th, 9 plus 14 is the 23rd. So a Christmas present for you. December 23rd episode of Breakpoint with Rob Bittner. Look forward to talking to you on that. Until then, or next time, or whenever we see you again, happy holidays. Please, everybody, stay safe. Enjoy yourself. Spend time with family if you can. Don't do anything foolish. This is a crazy, crazy time. I know there's a light at the end of the tunnel. We want to make sure that everybody gets together again at some point in the future so we can share this information face to face. So please take care of yourselves. Take care of your families. Enjoy the holidays, and we'll talk to you again real soon. Thanks.
Yes. Thanks, everybody.